Monitoring SAP environments is on the top of many clients' priorities. These environments represent some of the most critical business applications the customers care about. However, monitoring them is not a trivial task. Typically, there are several of these environments present and optimized for various use cases with deep interdependencies on business workflows. At the same time, these environments don't exist in a silo, but are highly dependent upon shared infrastructure components like virtualization, storage, compute, or networking. The traditional SAP monitoring tools like Solution Manager unfortunately don't provide any of these shared infrastructure correlation capabilities, understand typical environment usage, or allow you to integrate into larger troubleshooting processes via service management platforms. This is a real pain point, as you guys can surely relate to. You are asked to watch the company's crown jewels with very limited technical capabilities. The Service Intelligence for SAP Content Pack has been purpose-built to address these common monitoring shortcomings. Let me walk you through a typical SAP pain point. In this case, it will be iDocs related, and use this example to highlight the difference between monitoring specific ABAP data points or having a real-time service insight platform. Here is a typical pain point we hear from our customers. Corporate IT implements an infrastructure change. This can be on the compute stack, the storage or the database layer, or the shared network infrastructure, with the best guess on assessing the risk and the impact of the change. In our example, that change is a firewall change blocking a specific port across the board because of an active security threat. That change unfortunately blocks one of the SAP integration destinations for remote function calls to send iDocs, in this case, contracts, orders, and invoices between an ERP and a CRM SAP instance. What we hear from our customers is that they typically perform the destination checks based on the SAP checklist once a day, but because of multiple SAP environments and other competing workload, these endpoint tests are not constantly executed and monitored, and typically get exposed to by business users calling in about broken or partially executed workflows, or by batch jobs being hung or aborted. Now let's take a look and see how this particular example would materialize looking at the real-time health of this SAP environment using the Service Intelligence for SAP Content Pack. Here we have a real-time view of the M74 SAP instance. No failed batch job report or customer call is needed to see that the instance is in a pretty bad spot right now. Now let's investigate one of these hotspots by looking at the ABAP integration technical service. Based on the scenario outlined before, we immediately see that the failed destinations are going through the roof. Now let me stop here for a second and elaborate on some of the core capabilities of ITSI. ITSI has several machine learning capabilities built into the platform which learn the typical behavior of an environment. Like in this case, 28 failed destinations indicates a problem. In another environment, this may be perfectly normal. ITSI typically takes about 5 days to learn these typical behavior patterns. It will then adjust the thresholds accordingly, so you don't need to manually set them or understand the usage patterns of each and every one of these performance counters across all of your environments. Let's check out another hotspot in the current health of the M74 instance. Let's look at the real-time health of our queuing system. Just like we see that the failed destinations are increasing, we also see the failed remote function calls increasing quite significantly. One item I'd like to point out here is that all of these additional symptoms are displayed in real time, giving the operations teams as much insight into the current state of the environment without having to pull completely distinct event types or datasets. As you guys know, once the queues start backing up, it's only a matter of time until the business users are impacted and outage recovery efforts significantly increase. Now let's take a look at our beloved iDocs and check what state those are in. It is important to know that there's 2 levels of investigative data available for analysis. Within the SAP instance tree, we reduce the overall set of monitored key performance indicators to exactly that, key performance indicators, things that make the system tick. At any point in time, we can drill significantly deeper into those data sets, accessing another level of detail by launching the Power Connect best practices troubleshooting views. Power Connect is the brain behind the SAP Content Pack and is responsible for unlocking all the data elements from SAP and making it available in Splunk. Power Connect can literally access all the data points that are available in Solution Manager or within SAP reports and allow for a much deeper level of investigative analysis. Now here on a single screen we can highlight several of the differences in the traditional troubleshooting process within SAP. First, we see in real time various symptoms and issues across the entire event type landscape. Second, we only alert on the one KPI or the multiple KPIs that are truly abnormal, and we automatically learn the normal usage for each environment. And third, we put drill down reports at your fingertips to deep dive into all of these event types. Now, let's go back to the troubleshooting process. Once we determine that we have a high number of IDOC failures across many different IDOCs, it is definitely time to act. The challenge we've heard from our SAP customers is that while these failed IDOCs are typically symptoms of larger root causes, they often don't have the visibility into the shared infrastructure data to speed up their investigation. Just run through this example with me. You have a failed destination check. It could be an aborted job, an endpoint that stopped accepting new connections, a network path that is unstable, or a blocked firewall port. There's many potential causes for this failed destination check. Now, if you would have visibility into the health of the shared infrastructure components, you could fast track the investigation, even if you're not the one who eventually can fix it. So when you call the corporate operations center or you escalate through your service management systems, these details will help prioritize the business impact correctly for the network team, as well as provide them with the required details to speed up their side of the investigation. Let me show you how Service Intelligence for SAP would help in this area. Service Intelligence for SAP sits on top of Splunk's IT Service Intelligence solution, also known as ITSI. ITSI has an event analytics capability that at the surface may look similar to Solution Manager. In there, you can acknowledge events, reprioritize them, or change the lifecycle status. You can also act on them by either triggering automated, semi-automated, or manual recovery actions, or initiate a deeper and broader investigation and join individual events into larger episodes. Rather than dealing with individual alerts, ITSI clusters these alerts together and tries to present them in a way how they substantially shorten your mean time to repair. In this case, we see that this outage on the M74 ABAP system that affects TRFC, IDOCs, and the integration layer is also affecting the shared infrastructure, the networking, and the firewall tier. So if we go to our events timeline and toggle to the root cause analysis, we see that the first event actually originated from the shared IT infrastructure layer, and after that our firewall degraded. So what we will do is we will analyze this in more details using what is called a deep dive. In the deep dive, we have a time series that basically shows us every key performance indicator and its value over time. So here we see our IDOC failures, and initially they were fairly low, but eventually they started getting higher and higher and higher. Our IDOCs failures per IDOC, same thing. Now, if we overlay this information with our failed destinations, we see that before the deep dives degraded, our failed destinations degraded. Our failed RFCs were right behind them. So it looks like that the failed destinations actually were an early indication. After that, the remote function calls, and after that, the IDOCs failed. Now, what we want to do is, since the event analytics platform suggested that maybe the root cause may be in the shared infrastructure, let's bring in the shared infrastructure components. So let's drill down to the firewall tier, and in the firewall tier, under the shared infrastructure, let's look at the health. We see that networking is impacted. Under networking, we see that the firewall is having problems, and we see unauthorized connections being abnormally high. Now I already brought in my unauthorized connections, and I see in there that they really preceded the failed destinations. So it looks like that there's a firewall that may potentially cause this issue. Now, since we have many firewalls in our environment and this is an aggregated view, let me look into which firewalls are truly affected. Now in this case, I know for a fact that my SAP system sits behind the BizApps firewall, and the BizApps firewall is the one that's in a pretty unhappy state right now. Now let's take that information, move it to the top, and assume that the firewall is really the root cause. But let's see if there are any scheduled changes against the firewall system. In here, I can also bring in my ServiceNow change requests. By looking at the ServiceNow change requests, I see that there was a global firewall change implemented that updated some access control lists that may actually have caused this whole problem to begin with. Now I have enough information available at my fingertips to really take this episode and send it over to the corporate NOC with all the information that is necessary for them to solve this fairly quickly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to acknowledge this episode, and then I'm going to send it to ServiceNow. Now, out of the box, we integrate into ServiceNow, BMC Remedy, and Sharewell, and all the major ticketing systems like Atlassian's Jira. What we heard from many SAP customers is that this integration is a major pain point for them. So some customers told us that it took them north of 9 months to have their solution manager communicate with the ServiceNow system. With the SAP Content Pack, this integration comes out of the box. It even synchronizes major elements like the status or the priority. So as your firewall incident gets fixed and the status gets updated in ServiceNow, we'll see those updates reflected in ITSI. Now let me stop here and recap the major benefits in this troubleshooting process compared to the traditional toolsets that you are used to. First, you have real-time visibility into your SAP stack. This goes for the entire technical health of the stack, but it also allows you to look across your entire SAP landscape, as you see here. Here we have many SAP instances that all report the health in real time. The second piece is you have much broader correlation capabilities that include SAP, but also span shared infrastructure like compute, networking, databases. All these data elements represented blind spots to traditional monitoring in the past. You have much broader out-of-the-box integration capabilities that allow you to integrate into your corporate troubleshooting process, like service management solutions, for example, or the ability to automatically trigger recovery actions for well-known pain points. And you have a very, very short time to value. The installer is truly a turnkey solution, building out each SAP instance tree automatically and discovering the major components and the dependencies in that service tree. So with that, thank you very much for your time and let me know what you think.